Did you go straight to practicing law, or what did you do after that?
Yeah, I went to a medium-sized firm in the DC area. The firm actually had its principal office in Baltimore, and I really liked the firm. I kind of liked the culture that they had. Good lawyers, well respected, but people seemed to have lives, even though you had the billable hour thing going on. And so I signed on with them after doing the summer associate deal and said, all right, I'm going to go to the Baltimore office, even though my preference was actually to go to their Northern Virginia office in Tyson's Corner, Virginia. As I'm studying for the bar, they reach out and say, hey, the Maryland bar, mind you, hey, a position opened up in Virginia.
Uh,
Do you wanna take that position? I was like, I do, but I'm studying for Maryland right now. So they were gracious.
Welcome to the Founding Partner Podcast. Join your host, Jonathan Hawkins, as we explore the fascinating stories of successful law firm founders. We'll uncover their beginnings, triumph over challenges, and practice growth. Whether you aspire to launch your own firm, have an entrepreneurial spirit, or are just curious about the legal business, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
all right, welcome to Founding Partner Podcast. I'm Jonathan Hawkins, your host. We're going to have some fun today. We've got a really cool guest with a cool background. We've got Christian Simpson with us today. He's a personal injury lawyer out of, I believe, Virginia, DC area. And we'll dive into this, but he used to be a professional basketball player, so we're going to talk all about that. So, Christian, why don't you introduce yourself, tell us about where you are, your firm, what areas you serve, and all that.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Jonathan. It's really good to be on your show, and I've listened to some of your shows already, so I know that you go deep with your guests. But my deal is that I started Virginia Injury Law back in 2015, and since that time, we've grown to 5 lawyers, a good number of staff over 3 locations in Virginia. We're in Richmond, we're in Norfolk, and Virginia Beach, and then I'm actually resident in Alexandria. So I've been lucky enough to find good people that can manage those offices for me while I'm largely remote. So I obviously go down to those places from time to time and make sure that I have a presence. But by and large, I work out of my home and go to see clients as needed or go to see the team members as needed.
Okay, we're going to dig into all of that stuff. I'm really interested in how you manage the remote offices. I think that's a challenge, and so I want to hear how you do it. But before we get into all that, as I mentioned, you played basketball in college, and then you were able to play professionally as well. So tell us about your basketball career. I want to hear more about that. That's cool.
Yeah, I'm a hoop guy, man. A hoop fanatic still. The bouncing ball is always attracting me. And yeah, I got recruited out of high school here in the DC area in Alexandria, Virginia. And neat story there is that the coach that recruited me, his niece was like best friends and teammates with one of my sisters. So they go up to basketball camp at Bucknell University, have a blast, sleepaway camp. They come back and oh, it's so much fun. And they're like, hey, maybe we should let the little guy go, next summer. Like he's all into this basketball thing. So I go up to the camp, have a great week, just had so much fun. And my older brother comes to pick me up at the end of it, and the head coach, a guy named Charlie Woolham, comes out and he goes, yeah, he had a great week and he's a really good player. If he keeps working at it, maybe one day he'll play in college. And sure as shooting, that same coach is in my living room years later. He pulls out the camp photo, right, of me as
Nice.
a little guy with my socks up to my knees and everything. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So yes, I go to Bucknell. I was able to crack the starting lineup as a sophomore. The program was really in a good place already. They'd gone to the tournament in both 1987 and 89 and it just joined the Patriot League, which people probably know of now, but back then that thing was literally brand new. Like I was in the first year of the Patriot League. We had great teams there that couldn't get into the tournament, right? Because it's a one bid league. Like you got to win that conference tournament at the end, no matter how good your regular season is. And my sophomore and junior years, we were either the outright or co-champions of the conference in the regular season and lost in the final game to
Oh,
get to the NCAA
oh
tournament.
man.
So a little bitter taste there for me, but I had, I had a great career there. Was fortunate to, be inducted in the Hall of Fame there a number of years ago, and I went off to Europe after playing at Bucknell and played just a single year in Holland. I had a chance to do more, but I was a little too serious. I think now looking back, I'm like, man, I should have played at least another like 2 or 3 years before I jumped
Yeah.
into to being a professional. But at the time, I'm like, no, let me go back and sort of get back to the ultimate goal. I kind of knew I wanted to go to law school, coming out of college, but yeah, in hindsight, I should have just bounced that ball for as long as they let me and
So,
paid me.
so what's it like? What's the European League like? I mean, how does it compare? I mean, to U.S. Is it pretty big over there? And are you traveling all over Europe? Where all are you going?
Yeah, so I mean, you play in your individual country that you're at, right? There's like top division, but there's multiple divisions in each country. I was in the top division in Holland. Holland isn't known as having, one of the, like most prestigious leagues or whatever, but they had some really good players there. They allow a couple of foreigners on each team, right? And the assumption for many years was like, okay, you bring in like two Americans and they score all the points for you and kind of carry you across the finish line. But in truth, the Americans, and sometimes there'd be players from other countries, like Serbia had really good players, which is no surprise now. We see Nikola Jokic, right, as the best player in the world. But players from that country usually were the ones who determined whether or not you're going to win, because the Americans, we just kind of canceled each other out, right? Like I get 20, you get 20, the other guy gets 20, like and so. But if my Dutch guys are better than your Dutch guys, we're going to win. So,
That makes
um,
sense.
and if you're to your question about traveling around, you have to really be in the top tier of the league. So if you're one of the like top two or three teams in the top division, then you get to play EuroLeague, and that's that's some serious basketball being played there, right? You've got the top teams from each country. They play during the week, like you have your games for the country that you're in on the weekend. But if you're in EuroLeague, you'll actually play during the week and you'll travel around and play these top teams. We never got there. The team that I was on, brand new coach. I was a young guy. There's a guy from Georgia who I played with, a guy named well, his nickname was Big Mo, but we struggled most of the year and then played well at the end. So we never really had a shot to travel around. We just kind of see all the top level teams talk about what they were doing playing in Spain or Germany or wherever.
So if you got to travel around, maybe you would have stuck around a little longer, or maybe not.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
not.
was yeah, I was there for the experience. I mean, in all honesty, I thought to myself, and I got offered by my club to play one more year in the same place, and I was like, I'm really trying to like see Europe kind of thing. So, I don't really want to stay in the same place. And so what ended up happening is when I came back to the U.S. that summer after our season was over, I had an agent, so he's looking around and missed out on a job in Sweden. Would have loved to go there and spend a year, sort of checking out that country. And then I took a job at my old school at Bucknell in the admissions office. And literally like 2 days later, the agent calls up and he says, I got a job in Ireland. You can go play there. It's a great country, and you can, keep playing, right? Knew two guys who had played in Ireland. One of them I had played against in Holland that year, and they're like, "Hey, look, if you go there, you're gonna have a lot of fun. Like they party, like they're gonna be. But if you're trying to like have a basketball career over here in Europe, that's not maybe they're like you're going to score 40 points a game, you're going to all that stuff, they're going to they love to drink, you're going to have a great time, but that's kind of what it is. So the offer came in and I could have taken it. I could have said, all right, you know what, let me postpone the real world for a little bit longer, but for some unknown reason I said no.
Well, you're serious. You wanted to get started. You said
Yeah,
you knew you wanted to be a lawyer. We'll get into that. But
yeah.
did you go straight into law, or did you do something before law school or
Yeah,
before
so
practicing law?
Yeah, I ended up taking a job in the admissions office at Bucknell. So I did that for a year, applied to law school, got accepted to William and Mary, which is where I, eventually ended up going. But I actually deferred the acceptance and worked a second year at Bucknell in that admissions office. I had a different position there as essentially a students of color, a diversity recruiter, and so that was interesting to me to be in that role, and so I just deferred law school for a year.
Okay, so then you graduate law school. Did you go straight to practicing law, or what did you do after that?
Yeah, I went to a medium-sized firm in the DC area. The firm actually had its principal office in Baltimore, and I really liked the firm. I kind of liked the culture that they had. Good lawyers, well respected, but people seemed to have lives, even though you had the billable hour thing going on, and so I signed on with them after doing the summer associate deal and said, all right, I'm going to go to the Baltimore office, even though my preference was actually to go to their Northern Virginia office in Tyson's Corner, Virginia. As I'm studying for the bar, they reach out and say, hey, the Maryland bar, mind you, hey, a position opened up in Virginia.
Uh,
Do you want to take that position? And I was like, I do, but I'm studying for Maryland right now. So they were gracious. They said, go ahead, finish studying for Maryland, you know, knock that out of the park, and we'll let you, study for Virginia and get that under your belt once you're with us. So that's what I end up doing.
so you went to insurance defense. So let's you said you knew you wanted to be a lawyer. Now are you a third generation or more generation lawyer?
It's third generation. My grandfather was a lawyer, and my father as well was a lawyer. Before that, I had, you know, family members that were in varying degrees of public service. And so, even with just the two lawyers in front of me, which I think is, probably enough by most people's estimation, there was definitely like a real strong lineage there of, public service, and that, bore out because my grandfather was, a lawyer, but he was, the vice president of Liberia, which is a country that I was born in, and didn't move here to the U.S. until I was 5 years old, or just shy of five.
Yeah. So what was that like, having your grandfather be the vice president of a country? Tell me about that. When
Well,
I assume you came over here when you were 5, but I assume you still visited. Maybe you still visit today. And
yeah.
did you get sort of special treatment, or was it some
Well,
cool stuff?
yeah, but it's a small country. My grandfather passed away before I did, but my dad, was also, he held very high positions. So my dad was the Minister of Justice for a period of time, which is essentially the Attorney General there. But he also was like the youngest Supreme Court justice in the history of the country, right? So our family name, which is a big deal in Liberia, is just very well known. I mean, it's to the point, to give you just a sense, like we went back this past summer. I took my family. I like to, give them a chance to kind of see where we're from, where they're from. Took my family in the summer, and I went to a grocery store to get some stuff. We were just kind of hanging out at my brother's house, and this woman at the cash register looks at me and she says, do you have Simpson blood? I mean, and I was like, wow, I mean, I hadn't been back to this place in like 6 years, right? But she just took one look at me, looked me up and down, and had me figured out. So,
They got money.
it
They got money with your picture on there, right?
that's right, right. So it's a thing. I mean, it's definitely a thing. I had a teacher in high school who went to Liberia. He was African as well, but he goes to Liberia for a trip, educational trip, and he, knew my family's origin there, but he came back and he's like, "Oh my God." He said, "I told people that I was teaching the Simpson kids, and it was a whole different response."
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
it sounds like
So,
you were born to be a lawyer. I mean, it's in your blood. It's almost inevitable. Did your
yeah.
dad or your family sort of not necessarily pressure you, but sort of say this is what you're going to do, or did you feel pressure to do that?
No, I didn't feel pressure to do it, which is, it's a good question for me because my older brother is, Clarence Simpson the third, right? So by all rights, he was supposed to, jump in there and and be a lawyer, and he found himself, dealing with that pressure of, oh man, this is what I'm supposed to do. So super smart guy. He graduates high school early. He's like 16 and goes to college, does, incredibly well. And my dad had gone to Georgetown Law School, so that's where my brother goes. He ends up going to Georgetown Law. He's like one of the youngest kids there, and he was done in a year and a half. And not like his grades were bad or anything. Like he's just like, what am I doing here? Like
Hmm.
what? Why am I in this place? And so for him, that pressure was there. He felt it, and it wasn't his path. That wasn't what he was supposed to be doing. Me, by contrast, I go to college at Bucknell, and we got into a little bit of a situation when I was a freshman. And unfortunately, some buddies of mine on the basketball team weren't behaving too well, and we find ourselves in front of a magistrate judge on some alcohol charges, right? So the coach wanted to keep things really quiet, and so there's a local lawyer that was really, a big supporter of the team, and he goes, "All right, you three guys, go talk to this lawyer. He'll sort of tell you what to do." And so we show up at his office. We didn't know what was about to happen to us, and he starts telling us what we need to do to challenge the charge. And then at the end of it, he goes, "All right, well, one of you guys, we're going to bifurcate this. Like, you'll go separate to these two and all this stuff." And he said, "But someone's going to have to talk, and who's that going to be?" And my friends just look at me and go, "It's going to be him." So, at that point, I think I started to get the sense that, all right, this is where I'm headed. I had fun with the police officer on the stand. At one point, he said he had made an assumption about the alcohol, and I shut him down. I'm 18 years old, and I say, you know, listen, sir, we don't need you making any assumptions. What do you know? Please tell us what you know. And the
Oh yeah.
magistrate judge has got his head like buried. He's laughing, like, in this courtroom, this 18-year-old kid is dressing down a cop. So yeah, I was kind of headed there, or headed
Yeah,
here.
it was your calling. You got it. So, all right, well, cool. Let's get back to sort of the law firm. So you ended up at an insurance defense firm for some
hmm
period of time. How long did you stay there? And obviously, you left at some point to start a firm.
Yeah, I was there for 6 years, and I started out doing medical malpractice defense, but eventually slid over into the employment law field and had equal time in both spaces. So, good experience, really good lawyers that I was able to learn from, some good mentors there. But I actually left the practice to try to be a sports agent. Had restarted the Sports and Entertainment Law Society at William and Mary with a buddy, and thought, this seems more like what I should be doing. Just there's an entrepreneurial component to it, and so I tried to be a sports agent, getting players overseas to play basketball. And then I also had a connection, a Liberian kid who was playing at Georgia Tech, whose family we were close to, and they knew my history. And I thought, okay, there's a chance for me to nab a kid and be a sports agent. But I had a lot of fun, Jonathan, but I didn't make a lot of money, right? I had a lot of fun. So you're down there, in Atlanta, and you'll enjoy this story. So the kids at Georgia Tech,
That's my
I
school,
follow
right?
him.
That's where I went undergrad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I follow him for 3 years, right? Going to football games all across the country. I'm in LA. I'm doing all this stuff, and the dad is like, hey, you're our guy. Mom is on board. Your family, same country. All this stuff, right? And he said we've told him our preferences, and on and on. So I'm feeling really good about it. And then I get a call from the dad. Hey, we've made every decision for him up to this point, and we told him where to go to college. We told all this stuff. He said, but he's a man now. We're going to let him make his own decision. Well, unbeknownst to me, and I should have known it, right? That's why it wasn't my business full time. He had a buddy who was also from the Atlanta area and had, gone to school with him for 3 years. And that buddy was going to be the number 2 pick in the draft. He went about 6'5" tall, played wide receiver, and had the nickname Megatron.
Oh yeah. Oh
So
yeah.
Calvin Johnson was getting recruited by all the top sports agents in the country to sign with them. And my guy was like a third day guy, but they're like, he's Calvin's buddy. So he was getting recruited with Calvin Johnson. So I had no friggin' shot of signing this kid. And
That's a funny story. So I have a similar story. I'm not going to name names, but so where I grew up, this is years ago, football player. He was projected to be number one, he's quarterback, number one draft pick. And there were a couple lawyers in town that were friends with his family, and his family was like, "You're the guy. You're the guy." So they went and got their
yeah,
NFL agent, license, whatever it was, and they were doing
yeah.
everything, And then one day, his uncle showed up in a new car with some gold chains on, and they said they knew. So yeah, he went elsewhere too, and it was, I think, one of
Yeah.
his buddies on his team was going with some other person. So that's where.
Yeah, it's a nasty business, the agent business. I mean, to be
Yeah.
blunt about it, and so once that dream sort of died on the vine, I started looking to where I was going to go next. I ended up getting an opportunity with a plaintiff's firm, because the big firms at this point, they're scared about bringing me on. They're like, hold on a second, you left once, you'll leave again. And so this little boutique firm that did key tam work took me in, and I started, doing key tam cases in the DC area. The firm was over leveraged, right? And had tremendous success early, and then got, ahead of themselves. And so I found myself a couple years in with them, and they're, like I said, all of a sudden bills aren't getting paid. You're seeing all these things happening, and new family just had a daughter born, et cetera. And sure enough, they say, hey, we gotta let you go, right? This isn't working out for us. So the genesis of me starting my own firm, it happened then, even though I had more journey to go. Talked to a friend, a lawyer who was solo, and he said, I feel your pain on this, but you need to figure out how to get out on your own and control your own destiny. So I always remembered those words from him, even though I still had another detour. I worked for the federal government for 4 years after that, through some contacts. I was doing really consulting work, but then opening the firm began with me starting to do some personal injury work on the side of that, and seeing that was a space that I could potentially operate.
And so I guess that was in 2015. You eventually said, all right, you're going full time. What led you to say, all right, it's time. I'm going out.
Yeah, I mean, I'd always had an entrepreneurial bent. I mean, even in law school, I started a women's college basketball summer league that, ended up having legs. Carol Lawson, the coach at Duke now, the women's coach at Duke, she played in my league. I mean, so I always had this sort of, hey, I can go whip something together and make it work sort of mentality. And so I'm there in the Baltimore area at the time. And the guy that I'm working with says, there's a firm down here that's doing, 30 or 40 cases at this one clinic each month, and that's a lot of cases for one clinic from one firm. And I said, what's the guy's name? And he told me the name. I said, oh yeah, he's an advertiser. The guy, he advertises here and he advertises down in Atlanta, because I was down there for work and I heard the same advertisement. So he's like, oh wow, that's crazy. Let me, or let's get a hold of this guy, kind of see what the deal is. So we talked to the guy who was licensing his brand to these different law firms, and he starts throwing out some crazy numbers. And I think it sounds pretty good. We hang up the phone, and my buddy goes, man, he's full of shit. He wasn't buying it. So I said, well, look, I got to go back down to Atlanta. I have work down there. So I'll reach out to the guy in Atlanta who's using the licensing campaign, and just, do due diligence on it. And that's what started it. I ended up figuring out that, okay, this is something that does work, and I want to try it. But the fun part of my story, and I wouldn't recommend this to anybody, is that I did it the old-fashioned way, with credit cards and loans. So I'm sitting in my basement. I had a business plan. My wife was like, "You better have a business plan. You better have all these people look at it." I had a buddy who did come up with some money. He was a venture capital guy. He had 30,000 laying around, but my business plan said I needed $300,000 to start, right? And I already knew I wasn't getting that money. I was hoping to get half and just roll the dice. So I start looking at stuff online, and sure enough, I'm on like Lending Tree, I think it is, and they say personal loans for business. So I start filling it out, and next thing you know, boom, you're approved for like 30 grand. Oh wow, that was easy. But then I realized that that 30 grand that they're going to give me is going to show up on other applications if I go to these other companies to do the same thing. And so you know what happened after that. I just went from company to company that same night, four times, maybe five, and got a lot of money really quickly and said, let's go.
Nice. Real quick, thanks for listening. If you're getting any value out of this podcast, please take 2 seconds to hit the subscribe button and leave a 5-star review. It would really mean a lot to me. Now back to the show. Yeah, that was going to be my question. Did you have a nest egg? But obviously, no. Okay, so you take out all these loans. What,
Yeah.
obviously you believed in yourself, and it sounds like your wife was behind you. I'm not sure she knew what you did that night, but
She didn't know that was a source of concern.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
because that's, a big, most lawyers are risk averse. I mean, that's just by nature. I guess it's beat into
Yeah.
us. I don't know. So, obviously it's worked out. But yeah, most people would not have done that. So you believed in yourself. You said, all right, we're going to go. So you took out the loans and
Yeah.
you started going. And we all know with PI cases, best case,
It takes time.
yeah, best case, maybe 6 months, but probably more like 18 at
Mm-hmm.
least months for that really to start moving. So how did you make it work until they started paying out?
Yeah. Well, I was fortunate. We were able to get a little bit of a cushion, with some of the things that I had available before that, but not at a level that, could have supported us long term over time. So what I did was I just hung on, honestly, for those first, you know, I'd say 18 to 24 months, just hung on for dear life. And I still remember my wife asking, like, well, I know what plan A is. What's plan B? Like if this doesn't work, I said, well, plan B is plan A, right? Like we gotta make this thing work. So I ultimately, you know, I was in that debt game. I borrowed more, right? So I'd borrow against cases if I had good cases. I'd borrow against those. I think the people that I borrowed from, some of whom were attorneys, were shocked that I was paying them back quickly. I think they were used to seeing lawyers who were doing what I was doing, maybe not be able to meet those obligations. But what the lever was for me to get out of that situation. So we started 2015 late, 2016. I'm accumulating cases at a good rate, by the way. Like I've got plenty of inventory, which is a tremendous blessing at the time. And so late 2016, I brought in somebody who had run a firm before, run a PI firm before, and knew what the hell he was doing. And so late 2016, we said, all right, we're going to switch how we manage these cases and do it through the Needles platform at the time. So he knew it, and I knew that would help us overall, help my team overall in terms of moving cases more efficiently through our pipeline. And so 2017, the beginning was super rough. Clients were not happy. We were just, telling them, hey, bear with us. We're growing pains, et cetera, et cetera. And then right around the spring, right around this time actually of the year, it started to shift. And the foundation that had been laid started to turn into real traction, and we started to get it done. And I did travel that summer to Liberia. My younger brother was getting married. My wife and I finally had a chance to because I'd just been hustling for these, 2 years, whatever. She barely saw me. We finally had a chance to spend some time together. I came clean about the loans, and she wasn't happy about that. But I also told us like, hey, like it's working. Our trajectory is such that we're there, and I could see it. And before I was just kind of one foot in front of the other. I didn't have a big picture view. to really be able to be confident in that. But now I had it. And so that's what happened. We finished the year strong. I literally paid off. I started off, I borrowed about 130,000. Over time, I borrowed in total about $250,000 just to kind of keep it afloat. I had that all paid off in 2017 by September. And so at that point, where all systems go, 2018 was a great year. But then I then the troubles happened because I said, "Oh my God, I know what I'm doing now, and I'm going to grow this thing and just blow up into the stratosphere." I made the mistake of going to John Morgan's conference down in Orlando, and I thought I had this great year, made all this money, and then I heard what these guys were doing. I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, I think I need to recalibrate.
Yeah. Well, a couple things you said. Number one, I think it's hard to get your footing, but once you have the foundation, then you can launch off of that. So obviously it took you a while, but you got it. But then the second part is, there are always levels, and leveling up, there's more trouble ahead. You figure out one level, and then when you go to the next, it's a whole new ball game. So it sounds like you got to that point.
I did, yeah. So I came back just, tons of piss and vinegar from that conference. Like, oh man, I'm ready. We're gonna go on TV. We're gonna do this. We're gonna, all this stuff. And I read exactly one book on scaling, Vern Harnish's book that I'm sure most of your listeners are very familiar with, and it's sitting right next to me here still. Read that one book and said, all right, I'm good. Let's get it going. And then did so many things wrong at the same time that I knew better than to do, right? Because I'd been a consultant, even though it was with the government, talking to people about change management and how you plan, you build, and all these things I had been doing. But then with my own business and my own firm, I'm so gung ho that I just dive in and we start making all these large scale changes at the same time, opening offices, changing. Even though we were in the same building in Richmond, we moved to a bigger, we moved and took over a floor and, all these things, and then opened another office down in Norfolk, and we're hiring. I mean, we changed our case management system. I mean, I can go on and on. I mean, I cataloged it later as sort of a, remember when you did this moment, but,
It
the
sounds
long and
familiar.
short of,
It sounds a
yeah.
little familiar, I tell you.
Yeah. So you get excited about stuff, and then you forget, like, my employees, they were just dying. They were dying, and there were good people who we just had our best year ever, and so they believed in me, right? I mean, they were like, "Hey, Christian knows what he's doing." I mean, my check and that bonus that came at Christmas, I've never seen anything like that, So they were like, whatever this guy says, we're, we're gonna try to do. So yeah, so that was a really humbling time because all those changes, the additional money being spent, et cetera, they led to problems, particularly on the case management side. That's where it started to show up first. We started getting, more bar complaints, more stuff coming down the line. And that, that was, that was just taxing. I mean, my, home life wasn't happy. I wasn't happy at work. I mean, none of the things that I expected when I said, "Oh, I'm going to scale and go into the stratosphere." None of those things was happening for me at that time.
So you went through the tough times, we'll call it the leveling up times, but it sounds like you sort of eventually reached an equilibrium, or you sort of figured it out, and you've got, I think you said three locations that you're managing. It sounds like you've got that sort of figured out at least. And the other thing I want to hear about that, how you figured that out. But then also the other thing I want to have you touch on is the culture of your firm. I know that's important to you from some of our prior conversations. I like your attitude about it, and maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So, first of all, the coming out of it was just a process of literally taking a step back and doing a deep dive on what we were doing, how we were doing it, why we were doing it, and then frankly starting to listen to other people who had been there. I hired a business coach, good on a number of fronts, but mindset was huge there because I'd kind of lost my swagger after getting punched in the mouth. We had someone come in and assess the firm and say, "All right, what do you want to do? Okay, all right, this is where we see you guys, where we see you being strong, where you need work. And then I was fortunate to come across the Cameron Herold book, Vivid Vision. And my coach and I both agreed, perfect timing, take 2 or 3 days, figure out what you want to do and why you're doing this. Really take stock and figure out where you want to be. Best 2.5 days I've spent, right? Just getting away, no calls, no nut, and just going, all right, pen and a paper. And I just went to town for those 2 days, really hashing out where I wanted us to go and what I wanted us to be. And part of that was the core values piece. Ours are integrity, consistency, and empathy. I was very clear in that document, and I just had some conversations with some new employees today that I wanted people who were serious about what they do, but didn't take themselves too seriously. I mean, you've heard me laugh a ton already, in this podcast, and it's because I am super serious about what we do, and I get after it. That athletic background is, it just never leaves, right? I'm competitive. But that team sports aspect of it for me is that I like to see people do well. I like to see my people, do well, and it excites me. It gets me pumped up to see people grow and get better, and so I want that energy in the firm. I want other people who are similarly situated in terms of that mindset, and can laugh as we're grinding it out, and but are still obviously very serious about the work that they do.
I was going to ask you about that, sort of the parallels and the lessons learned from all the years of playing basketball, all the hard work in the team sport to get, to be able to play at a professional level. How does that, or what lessons, or what does that bring to you as a leader in building your firm?
I had some amazing mentors. My high school basketball coach was the very first one. And even today, I sort of marvel at this guy because he was literally in his early 20s when he started coaching me and others. But he seemed to have it all figured out in terms of really living by your values, just having that be foundational. And then, a mindset of, no shortcuts. This guy, just sort of laid it out for us like, this is what you need to do to be great. This is what you need to do to be a good teammate. And we're shooting for, you know, everything that's out there for us, right? But he never talked about winning, even though we won a crazy amount. He always talked about the process that got you there, right? And leaning into that. And we're in the middle middle of a process right now, my team and I, as we are in the third year of the Vivid Vision. Well, we've got some massive goals ahead of us, and this coach of mine unfortunately passed away last September, but I have literally been preaching his gospel to my team about leaning into the things that I want us focused on in order to meet these massive goals that we've laid out. So, the competitiveness and all of that is there, but he was about doing it the right way and being classy about it, and then just recognizing people. He didn't take a lot of credit, even though, all of his former players, he left the area that I grew up in and that he coached me in, and he coached in Pittsburgh and it was athletic director, and he won a ton of games up there too. It's like in all different sports, just a quintessential teacher and motivator. And so that's what I'm hoping to bring to my team now, because I'm not as involved in the day-to-day casework. I'm trying to set people up to succeed as opposed to, all these cases that are coming in, I'm the one managing them.
I like the team aspect and the mindset. And it's sort of, to go back what you said earlier, when you're in Europe, in Holland, it was all about the Holland teammates as to whether you were going to win or not, right? So, It's really, the weakest link. You're as strong as the weakest link. And, I think that's pretty cool that you have that background that you can bring to this. And, it sounds like you guys won a lot, but, the other thing is when you lose, you got to go back out there the next day. You got to shake it off, and you got to keep going, right?
Yeah, no doubt. And look, as I said, I like to joke around. I'm, definitely someone who enjoys life, and that's probably coming across. But, I get up early in the morning because I'm an early riser just by nature. My father was as well, and I definitely saw it from him. But I love grinding. Like it's, it's got to be something I want to do. And this is something that I really enjoy doing. But 4 a.m., 4:30 a.m., my wife, the people that work for it, they think I'm crazy, right? But I love it. I absolutely, wake up each morning. I don't even drink coffee. I mean, I'm caffeinated on my own, right? Ready to go. And what motivates me now, we're in a position where, I certainly make enough money. I damn sure make more money than when I was with the federal government. I make enough money that, we're comfortable and everything's good. And yet what motivates me now isn't, oh, I'm going to make more. It's no, like we're building something that's really cool, and I have a chance to impact these people that are working for me, these people that are trusting me with their cases. That is what gets me, just jacked in the morning. I just love it. Had a client today that I spoke with. She's had like two cases with us, and we've referred her out for a couple of poor things. She's like pretty fragile, but she just really paid me a high compliment in terms of our relationship. And I told her, I was like, this is the stuff that gets me psyched for my day. Like I said, I appreciate you sharing that. And I was like, it's going to carry me for not just today, but a bunch of days. But that's what gets me really excited.
That's cool. And you need it. I mean, if it's just about the money, I don't think you can live off that. It's like you'd be
No way.
running
Yeah,
on
no
fumes
way.
at some point. You got to have something bigger. So I want to get into your vision, and I know you've got a good one. I want to get into that in a second. But before we get into that, sort of, let's talk about, some of the good parts and the bad parts of just running your firm and owning your firm. So, if you could pick, one of the worst things or the things that perhaps frustrate you the most about being the boss and having to run the firm, and then on the flip side, what do you think's sort of the best thing?
Yeah, I think that the toughest thing is simply, I want to forge. I'm a believer in forging good relationships with the people on my team. I think, again, the basketball sports thing, Krzyzewski, that whole Olympic experience for him where he said, I spent most of my time just talking to these guys and getting to know them, right? So I think that's hugely important. And yet when you form those relationships, not every one of them is going to work out, right? And so I've been in that position on a number of occasions where, someone has really helped me and my team, and yet now we're at a point where, you know, their skill set and whatever is going on with us is no longer a match. It's no longer a fit. I know a lot of people that do EOS encounter this as they are building out leadership teams and seeing, do we have the right people in the right seats? And that happened to us. And we're just a recent adopter of EOS, but the same sort of thing happened even, before that. And that's a hard thing, because is a good person. They've helped you, right? They've helped you get to where you are, but it's not. It's my responsibilities to the business and to the clients, and that's not a relationship that can continue.
Yeah, that's rough. So, what's the best part? What's your favorite part about running the firm?
I like the vision stuff. I like the dreaming. I mean, I think back to when I was a kid playing baseball, and baseball ended up being too slow for me. I was pretty decent at the game, but I was like, I need more action going on. And I'd be sitting out there. I was in the outfield, not because I wasn't any good, but because they figured I could run to all the balls that were hit to the other kids who couldn't get to them. But I would just sit out there and be playing out scenarios in my head about, oh, if this happened and that. And I have a lot of fun, thinking about, the things that I can do with what, I've been able to create with others over the course of the last eight plus years. And that's a lot of fun for me. I love learning, listening to podcasts and listening and reading books and just learning from people. I am a big believer in talking to other law firm owners and learning how they did it. I've gotten a tremendous amount of value out of that. And so, yeah, when I'm in that space of kind of figuring out the path and thinking about some things, 2-3 steps ahead, that's really fun.
It's people talk about business is one of the infinite games. It never ends. And you can, sort of the whole point of it is to keep playing. And so,
yeah, just stay in, just stay in it.
Yeah, and you've done that.
Just
That's
stay
cool.
in it.
I really like, I like what you're saying about the vision. And I like Vivid Vision. That's a really cool book. He's got some good talks out there where he's talking about the Vivid Vision. I like the one where he's got that the music festival and the one guy's dancing and everybody goes to it.
Yeah,
So let's talk about your vision for your firm. Whatever you're willing to share. You've got 3 offices. Sky's the limit. What's the big time vision for you?
Yeah, we again have really leaned into, we meaning me in particular, but I've really leaned into getting good counsel from other good lawyers and law firms across the country. And I probably will talk to maybe one attorney a month or so. And sometimes it's great to get confirmation that we're doing things, the right way. And other times it's just a little thing, tweak here or there. But I always come away with a tremendous amount of value, and I'm super appreciative of those lawyers for sharing, how they've done it, basically. For us right now, we're on the cusp of getting to an 8-figure, being an 8-figure firm. And so that's the next step for us. And a big part of that is really just leaning into focus on the story of our clients and how that's impacting their lives. I think we have been so fortunate that we get a lot of cases, right? And so people, consider us a volume firm or worse, a mill, but we get a lot of cases. and I'm of a mind that, we've done okay in servicing the top end cases. The folks that we've talked to have said, you guys got a lot of room to grow right there. You're doing a good job, you're growing at a good clip, but once you start servicing those high-end cases even better, you're going to be in a great place. Structurally, I am actually quite comfortable with the idea that the lawyers in my firm can build their own personal brands. I literally had a conversation about this just a few days ago with the gentleman that I licensed the brand from for the last 8 years. We're actually going away from his brand in a few short weeks. And so, he and I have a very comfortable relationship. It's an amicable parting. I felt like, hey, we're sort of graduating at this point. I'm graduating. I also know that I've got about 2 years of cases worth of inventory, so I'm okay for a little bit in case there's a dip in case acquisition. But as he and I were talking about this, he goes, "Well, aren't you scared? You're going to have people leave and this and that." And I said, "Well, I kind of at this point am thinking of it more so like a college basketball coach or a college football coach that has a coaching tree, where you have these people that get to a certain point, and it's time for them to go." I've seen plenty of law firms that have people leave and go start their own law firms, and both the original law firm and the new one are successful, right? And so I don't have this scarcity mentality that I think a lot of lawyers and law firms, in our industry have. I just don't. Alex Hormozy, who's a big social media guy, I wish I had found the guy sooner, even though he's 20 years my junior. He talked about opening his first gym in Baltimore, and a buddy of his who already had a gym, when he said, "Hey, yeah, I'm going to open this gym," the guy's like, "How could you screw me like that? Like you're going to take all my business or something." And Hormozy was just like, "What are you talking about? Like, there's plenty of space for me to open up this gym and for both of us to be successful." And so I'm experimenting with this. I mean, if I'm broke in 10 years and it didn't work out, maybe you have me back on the podcast and I could tell you what went wrong. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think I have an opportunity to bring in young lawyers who are really good. I'm 100% owner of the firm, but if I have a lawyer that is able to develop their own personal brand and go out on their own and they're in my market, I'm actually not too worried about that. I've seen other firms and those lawyers survive and everybody seems to be able to eat. So I think that would be a neat legacy to have. And, I'm going to explore that even more in the coming years. But it's, we're going to keep growing. I'm niched, car accidents, the, African American and Spanish speaking communities are what I focus on. And I feel as though, big market advertisers that come and sort of flood the zone, they're going to get their cases, but being hyper local and hyper specific and niched is always going to advantage me.
Well, I'll tell you, your attitude is really refreshing. You don't hear that very much, sort of the coaching tree philosophy. I think that's pretty cool. And you're right. I mean, people come and go from firms all the time, and you can maintain relationships. And, people, particularly in the PI world, they're referring, and you co-counsel, you refer cases. So it's, you can be short-sighted or you can be long-sighted. And I like your attitude. I wish more people would have it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I said, I think it'll be proven out over time. And we have all levels in the firm right now because, this is just something I started literally, a year and a half ago, sort of encouraging the lawyers in my firm to build their own personal brands. And some have skyrocketed. Others are, still trying to get off the ground. But in either instance, we'll accommodate. And if it is time for somebody to graduate, I'm going to say, congratulations. This is great. We all started as employees somewhere. And if you have a chance to become an owner, I'm happy for you.
Well, that's cool. So I have to keep this podcast going for at least 10 years so I can have you back. I've had a lot of fun today. This has been enlightening for me. I think you've got a lot of cool stuff that you're doing. I can't wait to see, the more cool stuff you're going to do. But for folks out there that may want to get in touch with you and hear more from you, how can they find you?
Yeah, if they want to reach out for a case, it's 1-800-CRASH-VA. If they want to just get me directly, it's Christian@crashva.com. And then you can follow me on social at callchristianva. So those are the three best ways to get a hold of me.
And if you're a really good player and you want a cool agent, maybe he'll come out of retirement.
That's right. That's right. I'm all for it. I miss going to the game. That was the best part about being an agent. I got to go to, these football and basketball games all over the country. It was great. I couldn't monetize that thing.
Yeah. Well, cool, Christian. Thanks again. I've had a lot of fun, and good luck, man. You're gonna continue doing well. All right.
Thanks, Jonathan. Appreciate you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Founding Partner Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts to stay up to date on the latest episodes. You can also connect with Jonathan on LinkedIn and check out the show notes with links to resources mentioned throughout our discussion by visiting www.yourlawfirmgc.com. We'll see you next time for more origin stories and insights from successful law firm founders.